Hello and welcome to another episode of Songdoers. As I continue my work to educate you and struggle valiantly to pull you out of your self-induced ignorance, I sometimes find myself tired. Proper sleep, healthy eating, and can-do thinking are all important to one's mental and physical health, sure, but I find the most important element of clean living, the single most integral thing a person can do to keep motivated and operating at full capacity, is to hire a hitman to kill you if you don't do something you say you're going to do. It could be anything from washing the dishes to getting your master's. I have contracted one particular hitman, I won't reveal his identity because he hates that, who is all set to slit my throat if I don't publish this episode on time, walk my dogs this evening, or keep my intake of chocolate down to a reasonable level. So the next time you need to get something done, consider putting your life on the line. If that doesn't motivate you, well, then that's crazy. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe if you survive the hitman's attack, you should go to therapy? Therapy can be prohibitively expensive, but the hitman you hired should refund you. I mean, they didn't do their job. If you do not receive a timely refund from your hitman, you can contact HUPE, the Hitman Union of Planet Earth. They're a reputable body with a 5-star rating on the internet. They'll sort you out. Okay, that's it for the intro. I'll be back next week with another intro, unless my hitman and I disagree on what a reasonable amount of chocolate is. LOL. Songdoers! Episode 6. The Johnsons. The Johnsons were an English rock band formed in Yorkshire in 1983. The two main songwriters of the band were Pud Lomer and Matthew Brown. Nowadays, the two do not speak to each other. Instead, their lawyers do. And from what I hear, their lawyers are quite friendly and usually conduct business in pubs over pints of lager or flagons of ale. Laughter can be heard from the lawyer corner of the pub, but the work gets done. So Pud and Matthew don't complain. Except about each other. To anyone who'll listen. But to understand how things got this way, really bad, stay tuned. On the night that both Pud and Matthew turned 17, they fatefully met at an underground poetry club. It was Manchester, and it was snowing, and it was Christmas. At that time, poetry was illegal in England, with many socialites and politicians believing that rhyming words were riling up the masses and invoking civil unrest. As such, Pud and Matthew were instantly bonded by their covert, illegal, and emotional activities. The story goes that after Pud heard Matthew read a poem entitled Daddy's Dirty Hanky, he asked him to form a band. Matthew said yes, and the two came up with the name The Johnsons the very same night, with Pud suggesting The Johnso, and Matthew completing it with the letter N. Later in the night, S was added. The band immediately ran into problems at their first rehearsal. Matthew wanted to include synthesizers, with Pud being very against them as lacking emotionality. By the end of the first rehearsal, Pud agreed to try the synth sound on one song, with Pud's younger brother Mike, a trained pianist, manning the digital instrument. There was, however, a problem. Mike was used to heavy piano keys, and when he attempted to express himself with greater volume, the delicate synthesizer keys snapped under the pressure, and Mike's fingers touched exposed wiring. Mike was electrocuted. He died that night in hospital. For the next couple of years, synths were not mentioned again. But that golden era of no talking about synths ran until only after their hugely successful third album, Moon the Queen. Matthew again broached the subject of synthesizers. Pud reluctantly allowed synthesizers again, but only on the condition that they were inspected first by an electrician. A suitable synth was found and was used on their next album, Flip the Bird to the Queen. But when they were touring that album, again, disaster struck. When unloading the synthesizer, the brake on its rolling case broke, and the 200-pound case went rocketing through the backstage area of the venue. Pud's mother, who was visiting the backstage area, was squashed by the case. Pud's mother died that night in hospital. Pud was devastated. Matthew assumed no responsibility, though he has gone on record saying it must have sucked to be Pud. No synths were ever used by the band again. Flip the Bird to the Queen was the only album in their 4-album discography that included the synthesizer. But that didn't mean that Pud wouldn't have one final run-in with the electronic musical instrument that generates audio signals. That final run-in would happen in 1987. Pud and Matthew were leaving a pub after using it for drinking. Matthew went left, Pud went right. Matthew went straight home. Pud did not. Pud decided to duck through an alleyway to save time because his train was about to depart. Pud would not make that train. Halfway through the alleyway, he ran into a rabid synthesizer which was plugged into an outlet outside of a fish and chip shop. It was raining and sparks were flying. This synthesizer was dangerous, and it seemed fixated on harming Pud. Pud identified as a pacifist and had a peace sign tattoo on each butt cheek. The last thing Pud wanted to do was commit murder, but it seemed like it was him or the synth. The battle was on. We are fortunate to have an audio recording of that fateful battle. Pud always had a running tape recorder in his coat pocket, which he said was in case he came up with a spontaneous tune, or in case someone confessed to a crime for which he could claim a cash reward. Listen now to that fateful battle.
You cannot escape me, Pud. I am your destiny.
You killed my brother and my mother, though.
You cannot stop change. Their time would have come eventually, and the time of the synth is now.
Soulful lyrics and overdriven guitar will always be the backbone of the music industry.
Adapt or die.
Never! At this point, the recording stopped, but Pud's account of what happened is as follows. He kicked the synth, and it broke. When Matthew heard of this battle, he immediately took a different train to visit Pud in Manchester. Pud told Matthew he was done. The Johnsons were no more. Kicking the synth had permanently damaged Pud's big toe, so he could no longer play guitar. Pud blamed Matthew for everything that synths had done over the years, and banished him from his home. The two have not spoken since. The Johnsons will always be remembered as a political band, with a brief synth period that ended in multiple tragedies. Please enjoy this 1985 hit, Mr. Copper, a song that Matthew fought to get even a small amount of synth into. That's it for this week's episode of Songdoers, the podcast that you just heard and will likely start over again from the beginning to catch all the bits you didn't understand the first time. I just want to remind you that Songdoers is a United Nations funded podcast. All the countries of the world have committed a small part of their GDP to ensure the continuation of my important work. If you don't like what I'm doing here, you're an enemy of humanity. Good day. Ta-ta, goodbye.